My husband left me for a hot girl from the internet and disappeared for 8 years. Now he claims he has a proposal for me. I am 40 years old, and it's hard to make sense of the recent decision I made about my family, and I would like to hear others' opinions. My life turned upside down 8 years ago when my husband, Robert, suddenly announced he was leaving me and the children. He met some hot girl online and fell in love with her. His decision was a bolt from the blue for me and left me completely bewildered. Robert had been distant and not himself for several weeks before that, but I attributed it to stress at work. We had been married for over 10 years and supported each other in any circumstances. I knew Robert half my life, and we built a family together. The thought of his infidelity never even crossed my mind. One evening, Robert finally confessed that he had met someone. Those words shattered my heart. He said her name was Isabella, and she was the hottest chick he had ever seen. They had been talking for the last 3 months, and had grown so close that he realized he was unhappy in our marriage. Every word he said cut me like a knife, and a mix of anger and despair stormed through me. He kept assuring me that he still loved me and the children, but he couldn't deny his feelings for Isabella. He insisted that he needed to meet her in person to see if they had a future together. I was overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions and couldn't comprehend what was happening. It seemed like the walls of our home were closing in around me. With a tremor in my voice, I asked him if he was leaving me and the children for this woman. He slowly nodded, saying that although he didn't expect me to understand, he needed to do this for himself. He explained that he had thought about this decision for a long time and planned to meet her and start a new life. He said he was willing to provide financial support as much as he could, but he needed to follow his heart and meet the love of his life. My world collapsed. I simply couldn't believe that my husband was leaving me and the children for some woman he had never even met in person. At first, I wanted to scream, beg, do everything to make Robert stay. But I looked into his eyes and realized that he had already made his choice, and there was no going back. Robert moved out the following week, leaving me to explain to our children that their father was not coming back. 9-year-old Emily asked 1,000 questions, but I had no answers. 4-year-old Nathan couldn't fully grasp the scope of what was happening and looked at me as if he knew something terrible had happened. At that time, I felt devastated and broken, and only the children kept me from completely sinking into my sorrow. When I first told my family about Robert, their reaction was the same as mine. They simply couldn't understand how my husband, after so many years of living together, could do such a thing. My parents wanted me to go to court, but at that time, I had neither the strength nor the grounds for it, and I still believed that my husband would return to us. Robert's parents looked completely helpless and devastated when they learned that their son had left us. They called him many times, begging him to come back, but he told them the same story he had told me. Eventually, days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I had to pick up the pieces of my life for myself and the children. Our family and friends surrounded us with support and offered their help during tough times. I focused on finding a job to create stable conditions for Emily and Nathan, but the pain of my husband's betrayal never went away. All this time, Robert's parents were a great help to me, providing financial support and looking after the kids when I needed a break. It's been 8 years now, and Robert's presence in our life has become just a distant memory. He periodically sent money, but that was the extent of his contact with us. He never reached out to me or the children. Over the years, I've essentially become a single mother, working tirelessly to provide for my children and surround them with the love and attention they deserve. Although Emily sometimes remembered her father, she eventually stopped trying to contact him and learned not to mention him. Nathan was much younger when his father left, and he never talked about him. Despite the pain of loss, they both grew up to be wonderful people. Recently, Robert's father suddenly passed away, and we all attended his funeral. Later, the family lawyer informed me that he would like to talk to me about the will. The lawyer explained that Robert's father had left a certain amount of money to his grandchildren. Although it was not a huge sum, this money could help cover the children's college expenses. I shared the news with the children that they would no longer have to worry about the costs of their education. Their faces lit up with joy, and seeing their happiness was truly touching. It seemed that a big stone had finally fallen off our shoulders after a long period of uncertainty. Everything was finally getting back on track. Last week, I received a call from an unknown number. To my surprise, Robert was on the other end of the line. A wave of conflicting emotions overwhelmed me, and I lost my voice hearing his voice after 8 years. He hesitated before saying that he would like to meet with me urgently. Confused, I asked him to clarify what was going on. He confessed that he wanted to discuss some proposal with me and kept begging me to meet. I couldn't understand why he was calling me now, after so many years. His insistent request was hard to ignore, so I took a pause to gather my thoughts and eventually cautiously agreed to meet him alone. We decided to meet at a cafe near my office. After I hung up the phone, a whirlwind of questions and doubts left me in anxious anticipation of our first meeting after so many years. I decided not to tell the children anything yet to first understand what proposal their father so insistently wanted to discuss. The days before our meeting were an emotional roller coaster. I couldn't stop replaying the past in my head, remembering the pain of Robert's sudden departure, the difficulties of raising children alone, and the long years of trying to come to terms with his betrayal. So, I arrived early and nervously sipped. After a little while, he walked in, approaching me with a mix of hesitation and determination. I noticed that he looked older, worn out, and somehow completely different from the man I had married. Initially, our conversation was filled with awkward pauses and cautious words. We avoided the main topic, focusing instead on polite greetings and talking about the past years. At some point, Robert gathered courage and began explaining the reason for his unexpected return to our life. He told me that Isabella turned out to be not the woman he had imagined her to be. It turned out she was also a single mother, but had hidden this fact until he left us and showed up on her doorstep. Their relationship faced numerous difficulties, mainly because of her gambling addiction, which caused her to waste money. They often argued, but Robert decided to stay with her, not wanting to leave someone again. However, after the recent death of his father, he realized how short life is to remain unhappy every day. He thought about how he missed me and the children and regretted the choice he made 8 years ago. Robert continued, saying that over the years, he had thought about returning to us many times but lacked the courage to face us in person. Then he revealed that his father had left him their big house on the lake where we used to vacation as a family before Robert left us. He said he wanted to sell the house to secure a comfortable life. I silently listened to him, nodding. Then, Robert shocked me with an unexpected statement. He offered to return to us and give our children a luxurious life. He assured me that I would never have to work again if I took him back into our life. I looked at him in disbelief as he continued to convince me that we could live the rest of our lives without worrying about money. Essentially, Robert wanted us to reconcile and give our family a second chance using his father's inheritance to create a better life. I carefully considered his words, recognizing the potential benefits the inheritance could bring to our family. However, forgetting all the years of his absence, when I struggled alone with the children was simply impossible. Despite the idea of financial stability being tempting, I could not ignore the pain and anger that had accumulated in me throughout all these long years of his absence. So, I firmly told Robert that although I appreciated his offer, I simply could not forget the last 8 years. I told him that all this time, I had been raising the children alone while also managing to work, and although we do not have everything one could dream of, we have a stable life. I told him that I did not want to risk exposing myself and my children to pain again. I wanted to protect them, and was not sure if I could ever trust him enough to be confident that he would not leave us again. Robert continued to plead with me to reconsider my decision. His eyes were full of despair, but I knew that if I allowed him to return to our life, I would jeopardize the stability of our family. My heart ached a little at the thought of rejecting his proposal, especially considering the fact that he could solve all our financial problems. But I could not ignore the emotional wounds he had left behind. Since I met Robert, my parents have been asking me to reconsider my decision and agree to his proposal. They constantly tell me that the least he can do now is provide me and our children with a better life free from financial worries and restrictions. My parents claim that people can change, and perhaps Robert has realized his mistakes and genuinely wants to restore our family. They think I am being selfish and should put the comfort of my children above my emotional pain. The last few days, I have not been able to sleep, struggling with my choice. I cannot bring myself to tell the children about Robert's return. I worry about how they will react to this news and how they will perceive the idea that their father might re-enter their lives after 8 years of absence. I continue to doubt the correctness of my decision, torn between the potential benefits of accepting Robert's proposal and memories of our painful past. So, am I wrong to have rejected Robert's proposal and possibly deprived my children and myself of a better life? Update 1. In just a few days, I have received thousands of comments and messages from people. I am pleased to know that most of you do not consider me guilty. I listened to the advice and decided that it was time to have an honest talk with the children about Robert. The last thing I wanted was for him to suddenly appear in their lives and catch them off guard. Today, after dinner, I sat down with Emily and Nathan. I began to tell them about the unexpected return of their father and his proposal to come back into our life. Their faces reflected a mix of curiosity and confusion as they tried to understand what I was talking about. When I told them that Robert had inherited a house on the lake and wanted to sell it to help us financially, their reactions were mixed. Emily, who is now 17, showed a wide range of emotions from anger to shock. She was as bewildered as I was, and could not understand why Robert had decided to come back to us after so many years. Although she remembered her father and sometimes missed him, she also remembered the pain she experienced when he left us. She said that initially, she missed having a father figure in her life, but over time, she learned to live without him and no longer wants him to return. Nathan, now 12 years old, said he doesn't remember Robert at all. Therefore, he doesn't care that I declined his proposal. He had a hard time understanding all the implications of this situation. I honestly told them that I would accept any decision they made, as I respect their opinion. Emily stated that she absolutely does not want to meet him, and Nathan agreed, saying he is happy with the way things are. Now I understood that although the thought of restoring our family was tempting, the wounds of the past were too deep, and my children's well-being is my top priority. I knew I had made the right decision to walk away from Robert that day in the cafe. Update 2. In the last few weeks, Robert's calls have become increasingly desperate. Despite all my explanations that I do not want him back, he continued to call like a person avoiding conflicts. I felt cornered and emotionally drained by his constant attempts to contact me. I worried that he might suddenly appear at my work or come to the children's school. Therefore, I decided to talk to his mother. She knew about his return and seemed like the only person who could help me understand his motives and deal with him. I met with her to inform her of my decision to end my relationship with Robert and express my displeasure about his persistent calls. During this conversation, his mother revealed the true reason for his persistence. She explained that Robert's father had added a cunning clause to the will when he left him the house on the lake. Robert could become the owner of the house only if he returned to our family. For him to secure his right to the house, I also needed to sign the corresponding documents. This discovery shocked me and caused a feeling of disgust. Finally, I understood why he had been so persistently trying to contact me over the last few weeks. The main reason for his reaching out to me was not a sincere desire to reconcile or atone for his guilt, but a desire to get the house. This whole story seemed like a cruel manipulation of feelings, and I needed to carefully consider my next steps. Having learned Robert's true intention, I realized that it was time to act. At the time of writing this update, I had already begun looking for a lawyer to prepare divorce papers. I also talked to my parents, who now regret advising me to consider Robert's proposal. They understand that he has not changed over the years and support my decision to officially divorce him. They regret that they even suggested I listen to him, and now they know that leaving him was the right decision. At the moment, I have blocked Robert so that he can no longer bother me. I plan to meet him in person to hand him the divorce papers. Update 3. 2 months have passed since the last update, and now I can share some good news. As I mentioned, I was planning to hand Robert the divorce papers, so I asked him to meet me. He immediately agreed. Emily and Nathan expressed a desire to see their father for the last time. They had many questions for him, and I felt it was important for them to get answers to close this chapter, despite the pain of the past. We agreed to meet in a neutral place, a local park where we once spent many happy moments as a family before Robert left. Emily's eyes were full of a mix of curiosity and skepticism as she looked at her father. Nathan awkwardly stood next to me. From the start, I told Robert that I knew the real reason why he had decided to come back to us after so long. Robert argued that it was not only because of the clause in his father's will but also because he sincerely wanted a second chance for our family. I shook my head, understanding that I could no longer believe a single word he said. I told him that for us, everything was over, and the least he could do was give our children answers to their questions. He nodded. Emily was the first to ask him if it was worth leaving us for another woman. Robert, shamefully lowering his gaze, admitted that he was lost, made a terrible mistake, and deeply regretted his decision. Nathan, approaching the matter more directly, asked if his personal life was more important than the family he had left. Robert took a deep breath before answering that at the time, he was not thinking clearly and admitted that he was wrong to leave us. My children, insightful and strong, were not satisfied with such answers. Robert tried to justify his infidelity by calling it a midlife crisis. Furthermore, Robert shared painful details of his life with Isabella, the difficulties they faced, and the realization that he was chasing an illusion. Emily and Nathan listened attentively, although I doubt they believed him. They asked him why he had never tried to contact them, and if he truly regretted leaving us. I felt the pain in my children's voices. Robert admitted that he was tormented by guilt and did not know how to deal with the consequences of his actions. He repeated that he wanted us to be a family again, and that now he could provide us with a luxurious life. Looking into my children's eyes, I realized that the decision was obvious. They did not believe him, like me, and would not allow Robert to simply return to our life, offering money as compensation for the damage. It was a matter of principle. With full determination, I told Robert that we had already left him in the past, and did not need him or his money. I handed him the divorce papers while he looked at them with an expression of repentance and disappointment. He begged me, claiming that he sincerely wanted to atone for the years of guilt, but I remained firm in my decision. Then Robert offered to share the proceeds from the sale of the house on the lake with me, claiming that this way we could both benefit from it. But Emily immediately objected, saying that we did not need his charitable money. Nathan nodded in agreement and added that we already had everything we needed for happiness. At that moment, I think Robert finally realized the huge mistake he had made. He began to cry, asserting that he apologized to the children. He admitted that he had made a terrible mistake when he left us and realized that we could never forgive him. On the day I walked out of the park, holding Emily and Nathan by the hand, I felt free for the first time. I suddenly realized the burden I had been carrying for my children. It was nice to see how my children defended and supported me. Our divorce was finalized. I know that it will take time to officially free myself from Robert, but for now, I plan to take a break to spend time with the children. We are planning to go to Disneyland, a trip we have been looking forward to. I want to create happy memories with my children, filled with laughter and joy, to overshadow the painful moments of the past. I am sure that as long as we are together, we can handle any difficulties the future may prepare for us. Despite all the trials and emotional upheavals we have faced, my children and I are on the path to healing and creating a new, stable life. This chapter is still far from completion, but now we will write our own story, and I am determined to make it a story full of love and trust. Update 4. Since my last update, I have some amazing news to share. I was promoted at work, and it is a huge achievement for me. It took me a lot of time, but now I earn enough to support my family. The promotion not only brings financial stability, but also satisfaction from knowing that my hard work and dedication have paid off. The divorce proceedings are going well. I hired an excellent lawyer who, after studying the history of my relationship with my husband, is confident that the process will go smoothly. My family and friends have supported me all this time. Now that I am earning enough, I plan to send my children to psychotherapy. I understand that they may have issues related to feelings of abandonment, and therapy will help them better cope with emotions and overcome any residual experiences. I have carefully researched the options and found an experienced psychotherapist who specializes in working with children and families. In the meantime, as a parent, I try to develop my children's interests beyond their hobbies. My daughter Emily has a remarkable talent for drawing and spends hours creating beautiful paintings that decorate our home. My son Nathan has always had a natural talent for soccer, and on weekends, we go to his games and support him. I am proud of my children. As for Robert, we do not maintain contact, and I believe that it is better this way. As many of you correctly guessed, his lover Isabella unexpectedly contacted me. However, her message was not an apology, as one might expect, but was filled with anger and resentment towards me for allegedly taking Robert away from her. She blamed me for their breakup and claimed that I was the reason for his departure. In her messages, Isabella vented her anger towards our family. These messages were aggressive and troubling, and I could not help but be shaken by her rage. It was hard to believe that this woman had the audacity to be angry at me when she was the reason for the breakdown of my family 8 years ago. I replied to her that I had no desire to be with Robert and that I was in the process of divorcing him. I reminded her of the pain and betrayal that my family experienced when Robert left us for her, and told her that she had no right to talk to me. I emphasized how our lives were turned upside down then, and how my children suffered because of her. I made it clear that I never wanted Robert's return, and that if she needed to blame someone, it should be herself and her gambling addiction. I blocked her after sending this message, and hope that she will no longer try to contact me. I do not want her to disrupt the peace that we have built with the children. As for Robert's mother, I sometimes communicate with her, as she has always been kind to me. She expressed regret about how everything turned out and wishes me happiness. Interestingly, she also mentioned that due to my decision not to restore relations with Robert, the house on the lake will not go to him as originally stipulated in his father's will. This discovery was unexpected, though well-deserved. It is only fair that Robert face the consequences of his actions. I know that it will be a difficult path, but the healing process has already begun. My children are growing and thriving, and with each day, our future becomes brighter. Well, be sure to write your opinion in the comments. What do you think about this story? Also, I am very, very curious how you would have acted in this situation. Honestly, I'm not sure I would have refused that lake house or at least half of it. Also, I'm not sure I would have refused if I were a child, especially in the place of that 17-year-old girl. After all, at 17, you're already leaving your parents. Yes, it's clear that the father is a jerk, but why not chop off half of that lake house at the end? In general, you can consider me 10 times mercenary. Again, I emphasize that I don't know how I would have acted in this situation, but maybe I would have accepted the offer after all. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Watch our previous video, which you will see somewhere here. Subscribe to our channel, and good luck.